It's been argued that the invention of the printing press was the single greatest in modern times. The introduction of movable type printing presses brought about major changes in religion, language, science, and education. When we look at the radical effects the introduction of the printing press had on the 14th century, we can discover evidence that could be used to temper the wild conversations about where the use of the internet might lead our society. The effects from both the internet and the printing press are complex, but a closer look may help steer this modern conversation. With the introduction of print, books were no longer hand-copied manuscripts, which took a skilled illuminator several months to produce. Where one would have cost a small fortune before, now working families could acquire a small library for themselves. Previous to its introduction, education was based upon apprenticeships, with an expert teaching only a few students over their lifetime. But with the printed word being readily available, that shifted to universal education, where large schools taught many students. Similarly, the internet has changed the way in which individuals approach their own education. Education researchers Collin and Halverson compared the two technologies in their article, Rethinking Education in the Age of Technology, the Digital Revolution and Schooling in America. They presented that the new media that is being made available to students may have as meaningful influence on education as the printing press once provided. Videos are better able to express emotion than text, but are not as useful for studying since they tend to be watched straight through. Computers bring together many medias, which can each be chosen when appropriate for the learner or the material being taught. Like the internet today, the printing press had many outspoken opposers, who at the time were incredibly influential. Some even went so far as to call it a machine produced by the devil, trying to steer wayward souls to hell by making Protestant propaganda readily available, or making the monks, who had been hand-copying many of the previous manuscripts, even more slothful. Those making these statements, however, eventually were either left behind in the debate or learned how to profit from the new technology. Even Benedictine abbot Johannes Trithemius allowed his work, In the Praise of Scribes, to be printed to reach a larger audience, probably much to his chagrin. James Dewar of the Rand Corporation presented in his article, The Information Age and the Printing Press, looking back to see forward, that the spread of early pornography and secret societies didn't overshadow the other significant reforms that were ignited by the introduction of the printed word. While these are all significant parallels between the new and the old, I chose to focus on the connection they had in changing the English language. The printing press helped standardize a language that had been constantly changing and formalize things like spelling and punctuation. Dr. Brooks from the Humanities Department at Valencia Community College in Orlando, Florida, presented that the main center for printing in each region is where languages began to become standardized. London was the printing capital for the English-speaking world, and it was their standard that was printed, while northern dialects began to fade away. Before the printing press, our culture was predominantly an oral and memory-based world. Evidence of this can still be seen in words like court hearing or tax audit, since in the beginning these processes were both done using speech. The introduction of the printing press sped up discoveries in science and medicine, giving experts who lived great distances away the ability to collaborate. It seems that the internet may be our printing press, the catalyst by which we fuel our generation's greatest discoveries. Today, there are outspoken opposers of how many currently use the internet. Nicholas Carr, the author of The Shallows, warns that the internet and its related technologies are having a negative effect on our ability to focus and our cognition. We are no longer able to focus on the written word and tune out distractions like we once had been able to. Carr fears that this could mean the death of the printed book. Neurologists, journalists, and psychologists have all been interested in the effects the internet have on cognition and memory, And in the years since Carr wrote his book, this discussion has only continued to grow. While the internet may provide distractions to some, since there will always be the unscrupulous who use new technologies in damaging ways, it is an invaluable tool to others. Or perhaps those distractions that they're creating are making our generation better able to function in a world that celebrates those who can function in a fast-paced environment. At work, I have 3 computer screens, all of which are used at one time, pulling me from a spreadsheet to email to online databases and then back again. Knowing how to be effectively distracted is a job skill. Language is a constantly evolving and fluid matter that we shouldn't be afraid to allow to freely change at its will. Although we won't know for decades the effects or the progress that the internet will lead us to, it should be simply left to create the future it has in store for us. Our world is driven by a dialect that is evolving at the speed of a network connection, and we have to understand the past in order to keep up with it.